to the Great Northwest for the West Series Coors Light 200 presented by Napa and Creekside Mountain Glen Retirement Centers. We're at Evergreen Speedway in Monroe, Washington. Beautiful setting here. I'm Rick Allen alongside of Phil Parsons. We'll be joined by Wendy Veneriti down in the pits. We take a look at our point standings through 5 races. Scott Lynch with 2 wins on top of that mark. Steve Portengay, 46 points out of the top spot. Mike Duncan, third, 68 points out of the top position.
Race winner from earlier this year, David Gilliland, is in 4th, and we have 2 rookies in the top 10, Andrew Myers and Andrew Lewis, 8th and 10th.
One of the busiest men today has been Steve Portengay, standing by with Wendy Venerini.
Steve Portengay is coming off that win from Irwindale. He sits second in the points. Now, Steve, you've had a very long weekend already. Yesterday in the open test session, you changed an engine for precautionary reasons, and then today after practice, you changed an engine again. Why so?
Same type of deal. You know, the Bill Meropoulos builds great engines. We have had all 3 cars have a lot of success, and last week we won, and we brought the same engine here, and just a little bit of valve lash was a problem, so we didn't want to take a chance last night, and we put another motor in today, and then we were fastest car in practice in the Napa Auto Parts Chevrolet, and then that motor had a little bit of material in the filter, so, you know, we're just with a short schedule in our series. You know, the Napa Auto Parts team is trying to get a 4th championship, and that's what we're striving for, and we're just taking precautions.
Steve's headed for a championship this season, and here's an interesting stat, folks. 5 of the last 9 winners here at Evergreen have started from the 4th starting spot. Guess who starts 4th tonight? Steve Portengay.
Well, thank you, Wendy. Let's take a look at that starting grid. Mike Duncan will be on the pole for tonight's race. David Gilliland just on the outside of him.
Terrific run for Sarah Fisher. Her best career start inside row number 2, 3rd position, alongside her teammate, Steve Portengay.
Row number 3, Ed Watson and Andrew Lewis making up that row.
Andrew Lewis, 18 years old.
Andrew Myers and Scott Lynch, 2003 West Series champion in row 4.
There's Daryl Haar and Jason Jefferson. Jason has a lot of experience in the Northwest Tour in this area.
Mike David and Scott Gaylord make up row number 6.
Scott Gaylord still looking for first career win in the West Series. He's got 3 second-place finishes.
Row 8 shows us Tim Smith on the outside of row 8, Chris Schmezel on the inside.
There's longtime competitor Jack Sellers inside row number 9.
Travis Powell will round out the field of 19 cars going to start this race tonight. Again, this one going 200 laps for 129 miles. Racetrack just over a half mile, 5/8 mile track.
You see the lines right there. That was actually a smaller track inside of this track. There's our on board with Steve Portengay, the Napa Chevrolet, starting 4th. One of 3 team cars for Bill McAnally Racing.
Now, Phil, this is a relatively flat track. I wouldn't say relatively. It is about as flat as you can get for a short track. Preferred line going to be on the inside?
It is going to be on the inside, but this racetrack surface is so abrasive that most of the drivers talk about diamonding this racetrack. Go in a little bit on the low side, slide up in the middle of the corner because you're going to have no grip after about 10 laps, and then try to get a shot straight off the corner. You want to get the car turned and get off the corner as straight as you can.
Now, with Mike Duncan having the pole, is it ideal to be on the inside to start this race, or would it be better to be on the outside to get a stronger run in it, turn 1?
No, I think he wants to be on the inside. That would be the preferred line here, especially early on.
Field continuing to warm the tires up, clean the tires off, getting ready for this battle between the 19 cars on the track. Mike Duncan, our defending champion in the West Series, sitting on the pole, looking to improve upon his wins record. Only has 3 wins so far in this series. Wendy Venerini has more on our pole sitter.
Our pole sitter, Mike Duncan, is the West Series qualifying king as of late. It's already his 4th pole this season. Now, Duncan's been consistent when it comes to Evergreen Speedway, finishing in the top 3 the last 3 visits here. But although his crew chief, Bill Sedgwick, has graced victory lane here twice at Evergreen, Mike Duncan has yet to seal the deal. Now here's the real kicker, guys. There's been 37 winners at Evergreen. Only 8 of them have won from the pole position, and that was back in 1982 the last time that happened. The odds may be against Mike Duncan here tonight. That was a long time ago, guys.
23 years since a pole winner has won at Evergreen Speedway. We'll see if Mike Duncan can change that historic fact and maybe make that a 2005 record.
That's one of the guys that wants to keep him from doing that. David Gilliland, he will start on the outside pole. Winner earlier this year at Phoenix. He said that's probably the biggest win of his career that went at Phoenix against people like Kevin Harvick and other drivers of that nature.
David Gilliland on the outside of Mike Duncan. Again, 19 cars all lined up 2 by 2. Bill McAnally cars on the making up row number 2.
Andrew Lewis drives the third Bill McAnally car. He will start outside row number 3.
The pace is now in Mike Duncan's hands. He'll take the field through 3 and 4. Again, David Gilliland on the outside. It's been 23 years since a pole winner has won this race. We'll see if Mike Duncan can change that statistic. As they come out of turn number 4, they will catch the green flag, and we're racing in Monroe, Washington. Side by side early on for the top spot. Duncan and Gilliland trading paint almost coming out of 2.
David Gilliland's got the advantage going in turn number 3. Let's see if he can hold it.
Sure enough, David Gilliland looks as though he will lead the first lap. They come out of turn 4, and it's David Gilliland across the stripe at Evergreen Speedway.
Maybe Mike Duncan should have chosen the outside for the start.
Well, David Gilliland out in front of this one now. Mike Duncan settled back into second.
I talked to Mike Duncan a little bit before the race, and he said that in the years past year, his car has got extremely loose. So he wanted to set his car up a little bit on the tighter side, which means he's not going to lose the back end as much. So that may be why he's fallen back a little bit, and David Gilliland is setting such a torrid pace.
Got his hands full, it looks like, with Steve Portengay as we ride along with the 16 Napa Auto Parts Chevrolet. He's all over Mike Duncan. That was a battle for second.
We heard Wendy tell us about how much trouble they have had in the last couple of days. They've already changed 2 engines in that Napa Chevrolet.
Pretty good lead now for David Gilliland. It looks as though he's running very well out in clean air. Mike Duncan, a couple car lengths back from him.
We've got a good view of diamonding the racetrack. David Gilliland drove in on the bottom of the racetrack, slides up ever so little in the middle, and then gets a turn, gets back in the throttle, and tries to drive straight up off the corner.
Duncan and Portengay nose to tail as they make their way into 1. Now they begin to reel in David Gilliland a little bit, but there's still a pretty good size gap between Portengay and Sarah Fisher.
All the drivers in the garage area say these new tires, these new Goodyear tires, only last about 10 laps. Now that's not indicative of the fact that they have bad tires. This surface is so abrasive, it's very, very much like our Darlington back east, that you have about 10 good laps on the tires, and then you're just slipping and sliding. All the drivers say it's just like that.
And doesn't a short track that's very flat really work against those tires? It's very abrasive.
Oh, it really does. I mean, but this surface is fairly old, and it's got a lot of sand base to it, so you just don't have the grip. Again, it's not Goodyear's fault, and they have a little bit different tire this year than they had last year. They're still Goodyear bi-ply tires, but it's a little bit different tire, so some of the drivers say it's really a challenge trying to get the proper setup with this Goodyear tire.
Mike Duncan had talked about setting his car up a little bit differently at the beginning of this race so it wouldn't become too loose on him. And it looks as though he's starting to settle in. You had mentioned diamonding earlier. He's able to hold that line a little bit better now.
Good shot of Sarah Fisher. What a great qualifying effort for her in the third position, I'm sorry.
You see the yellow stripes on both Sarah Fisher and the car behind her. Rookies in this series this year.
That's the 18 of Andrew Lewis. There's the 55 of Ed Watson. He's an infrequent competitor on the West Series. He does have a 4th place finish here, though, back in 2002.
And we see a good look at this battle for 4th right now. Sarah Fisher holding on to the spot. Out in front, it is David Gilliland holding off Mike Duncan, Steve Portengay, Sarah Fisher, and Andrew Lewis.
That's the reason why we won tonight. I knew we had a good truck.
Freeze. Why does the winner of a NASCAR Craftsman truck race give so much credit to the truck? The truck this, the truck that. Come on, drivers, stop being so modest. You're making the truck do things it never dreamed of. 180 on a 45-degree bank, 6 inches from the wall, 6 inches from another truck. You think if they interviewed the truck, he'd be as humble as you? Oh, my driver was really on today. I don't think so.
And welcome back to Evergreen Speedway. We're under our first caution as Chris Schmelzel had some problems negotiating this short track. Didn't get into the wall though, so not too much damage as we complete our first lap of caution.
Let's see if we can take a look at what happened to Chris. There you see him, appears to be all by himself, but fortunately, as you mentioned, not making any contact with the outside wall. But as we talked about earlier, the tires don't have a whole lot of grip in them, and those are going to have even less. Here's a double file restart. Now this is very, very big. A lot of mixed emotions in the garage area about these double file restarts. I mean, I think David Gilliland right now, who is leading, he would much rather have the 9 of Mike Duncan behind him instead of beside him.
Now the benefit of the West Series is that the Busch North Series has already had this new restart rule. They've been able to hone it a little bit to where they've taken the lapped cars and put them behind the lead lap cars.
Yeah, I think that's a great move because you would have, right now you would see David Gilliland, the 88 and the 9 of Mike Duncan. There may be a lap car right behind them where Steve Portengay is, but they move them to the back and they will give a beneficiary rule. The highest ranked non-lead lap car will get a free pass and get his lap back.
David Gilliland able to fight off the 9 of Mike Duncan, and it looked as though the 16 of Steve Portengay with a great restart was able to get on the inside of Mike Duncan, and there's a great battle for second. Wendy?
David Gilliland, our leader, might have some problems on the 88 car. I was just listening to Mike Nake, his crew chief. Their communication on that last caution, they may have left something loose in the front end of the 88 car, so we're going to watch them closely. They thought about pitting on that caution. They decided not to jeopardize the lead position they have at this point. I'll keep you updated.
Well, that's extremely important as David Gilliland continues to lead at this race.
Whatever they left loose, I hope it's not anything that connects to the wheels.
A steering column would be something you would definitely like tight. And now Mike Duncan has, looks like, taken care of the second position from Steve Portengay, and looks as though he's starting to reel in David Gilliland. David Gilliland with a pretty good start to the 2005 season.
We're top 5s in 4 of the 5 races. Had a great win, we mentioned earlier, at Phoenix earlier this year.
One of the reasons he is in the top 5 in points right now, currently 4th in the point standings, David Gilliland.
We see all the cars now driving that diamond pattern. There's driving right on the white line, slide up in the middle of the corner, get it turned, try to get a straight shot off the corner, because these forward bite is really an issue here. These cars and the tires, as they get a lot of laps on them, will really have trouble hooking up off the corner. That's why you want to get as straight a shot as you can. There's a good view out of Steve Portengay's onboard. You see him drive right to the bottom of the racetrack. He slides up actually into the second lane, turns it right back down to the bottom, and straight shot off the corner.
Try to get as straight of a line as possible to go down that back stretch or the front stretch, whichever corner he's coming out of. He looks as though in 3 and 4 he's able to hug the line a little better.
It's a little bit different groove down there. They say you don't have to diamond it quite as much down in 3 and 4 as you do 1 and 2. A lot of history associated with that 16 car, though. We saw Brendan Gaughan win West Series championships with that car.
Austin
Cameron did such a great job in that car, champion.
Andrew Myers and Mike David battling for the 6th position.
Mike got his first career win last year at Stockton in the West Series.
About to use the bumper, trying to get Myers out of the way there.
Looks to the inside, not quite able to make it work this time. See if he can get the power down. He's got to drive straight off the corner.
Mike David looks as though he's going to settle back into 7th position. Wendy, how's Mike doing?
The 2 of Mike David, there's a little bit of a story there. A crew chief change this week. Usually his crew chief is Jerry Baxter, and he's not here this weekend. Subbing for him is Mike's father, Norm David. Crew chiefing on on the 2-car today. Now, Jerry Baxter's not here for very valid reasons. It's because he's the car chief on Michael Waltrip's Busch team. And as we know, the Busch team was in St. Louis this weekend running the Busch race. So Mike David's usual crew chief had other duties to attend to this weekend.
And while Mike David was running back there behind the 44 of Andrew Myers, he got real loose.
See if we can take a look at it there. He wiggled a little bit off the corner and then had to take about half the straightaway to catch up to the steering.
Handful of steering wheel for the 44 of Andrew Myers. David Gilliland holding on to that top spot and actually running on the inside of the white line. So that 88 handling very well so far. It doesn't look as though whatever was left loose is causing any problems for the 88. We'll be back with more from Monroe, Washington.
10 years rockin'. 10 years rough. 10 years tough. The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series returns to the short track, Bristol Motor Speedway. Grinding banks.
Be patient.
Side-by-side rivalries.
We'll see what happens.
It's one of the most intense races of the year.
Action is fixed to get intense.
The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series live from Bristol. Wednesday night, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, only on Speed.
Back to the Coors Light 200 on Speed Channel. We're at Evergreen Speedway for race number 6 of the West Series. David Gilliland still holding the top spot. Mike Duncan holding on to second.
Got a great battle for 11th right there. That's the 71 of Daryl Haar. He's used to racing against his father, but his father, they had some turmoil within the team. They lost some people, so his father said, hey, I'm going to sit out, not drive, and I'm going to be the crew chief.
Carl Haars, who's Phil talking about there, his father. Daryl out in front of this gaggle of cars, the 3 of Tim Smith and the 00 of Scott Gaylord, all involved in that battle for 11th.
Scott had a bit of a slow start to the season, but he's got a couple top 6 finishes the last 2 outings, so he's getting back on track.
Nose to tail, very difficult to pass here, Phil. At what point in time do you maybe help somebody out to get by?
Well, you know, you're early in the race. We've only got 36 laps into this race. I don't think you want to do that quick unless you see a giant gap in front of you. And that's your sign that, hey, this guy is holding me up. I know I've got a better car. I want to be able to get by him, as we saw the 3 of Tim Smith make that pass on the 71 of Daryl Haar.
And it looked as though Daryl Haar actually may have noticed he was holding him up. He moved a little bit higher line, and it looks as though Scott Gaylord's going to try to do the same. Now David Gilliland holding on to the top spot. Mike Duncan has reeled him in a little bit, though, as they're closing in on the slower lap traffic.
We saw the 88 of David Gilliland, his left side's below the white line. They're just trying to get any kind of grip he can get on this racetrack.
Gilliland's best finish at Evergreen, a 6th a year ago, trying to improve upon that.
Good view of the backstretch there as we see that 88 of David Gilliland go by. There was a 9. We caught a glimpse of second place, Mike Duncan, the Lucas Oil Chevrolet. As you can see, David Gilliland finished 6th in this race last year.
Gilliland reeling in now the slower lap traffic. That is going to slow him down a little bit, probably enable Mike Duncan to catch him now, as he has to negotiate his way around the other cars on the track.
I think that was the 09 of Takuma Koga getting a lap down here.
Takuma out of Bellevue, Washington, originally from Japan. See the intervals at the line. Gilliland just over a second in front of Mike Duncan.
Mike Duncan did have the fastest lap that time, but as we saw, David Gilliland was lapping Takuma Koga, so that's what slowed his lap time down.
And how difficult is it, Phil, now when you're running well, but you've got the slower lap traffic that you've got to either decide, am I going to go the high line or the low line?
Well, hopefully the guys in front of you that you're lapping, like Jack Sellers right there, will give you a hand signal and point you to the outside or the inside. You know, some of the guys may be better on the outside, so they'll want you to pass on the inside. Some of them are just the opposite, but normally you'll get a hand signal to alert you as to which way they want you to go.
Great battle for 10th, Andrew Myers and Tim Smith. Smith trying to get on the inside of Andrew Myers. Now he'll work to the outside.
We saw Tim make the pass on the 71 of Daryl Haar, and now he's driven up to the next battle. So that means the 71 of Daryl Haar was holding him up. Tim Smith did a great job getting by him, as he does get by the 44 of Andrew Myers.
Tim Smith able to get by Andrew Myers, putting a couple cars back behind him now as he's moving his way forward.
Now he has some clean racetrack as he can go try to catch the other battle. Looks like he has a pretty good car right now. You see him open up about 3 car lengths on the 44 of Andrew Myers.
Bill, how difficult is it? We're seeing the cars coming in and out of the lights here. How difficult is that as a driver to drive through parts of track that are very bright and parts that are dark?
I've heard some of the drivers tell me that they have an amber shield which is supposed to brighten things up. But even with the amber shield, they don't think it's quite bright enough there. There are some spotty areas here at this racetrack for lights.
Almost a fourth of the way done with the Coors Light 200. David Gilliland has led every lap so far. Mike Duncan still giving chase. And welcome back to the Coors Light 200 on Speed Channel. We're at Evergreen Speedway, the Great Northwest. I'm Rick Allen alongside of Phil Parsons. Wendy Venturini helping us out down in the pits. David Gilliland dominating this one so far. This is short track racing. You get out front, and it's very difficult to get by you.
It really is. But Mike Duncan seems to be closing that gap up a little bit. He's gained a little bit on him. He was about a second, 2/10 behind a few moments ago, and now it looks like he's probably within a half second.
It looks as though Mike Duncan's able to run a little tighter line than David Gilliland is right now.
Watch David Gilliland. He's sliding up a little bit farther in the center of the corner than he had been earlier. That means his tires are giving up some, and he's fighting for grip.
So Mike Duncan reeling him in. Those two cars have separated themselves from third place Steve Portengay.
Remember, Mike Duncan set his car up a little bit on the tight side, which means he would have to struggle to get his car turned in the center of the corner. But he said the last 3 years here, his car always got loose in the race, so that's what they wanted to do. Even though he got loose, he had top three finishes in the last 3 years here, so he knows how to get around this racetrack, and he's had a pretty good start to this season, too, with 4 top 5s in 5 races.
Still hasn't found victory lane, though, and a little bit odd for our defending champion of this series to not win a race.
Well, remember, he only won 1 race last year in his championship season, but he's very, very consistent, always in the top 10, most of the time in the top 5, but he'll break through here with a win soon.
Mike Duncan out of Bakersfield, California, trying to reel in the Chino, California native.
He is definitely gaining on David Gilliland. We're only a fourth of the way through this race. NASCAR has allowed these teams 4 extra tires to run this race, so the strategy will be when will they put on their 4 tires, because again, they're only going to be good for about 10 laps, and then you're going to have what you have. So the strategy of when to put the tires on is going to be very critical. You don't want to put them on too early and then not have anything to race with at the end of the race, but then again, you don't want to stay out there when everyone else has fresh tires. You could find yourself lapped in just a short period of time.
I know it's a little bit odd, but we haven't had too many cautions so far. 1 caution so far in this race. Wendy, what's happening in the pits?
We all know how useful it can be to have some experience on your pit box. Well, Bill Sedgwick, the crew chief for Mike Duncan, does just that tonight. He has 2 wins here, as I mentioned before, and he gave some really good advice to Mike Duncan. He said, race the racetrack, and what that means is he didn't want Mike to abuse the race car. He didn't want him to use his tires and have excessive wear on his tires, so he didn't want him to race the cars around him, which is why you see the 9 car of Mike Duncan out on his own for now. We're only on lap 55, folks. Mike Duncan's taking it nice and easy and being patient.
And it looks like he's taking it easy with the exception of the driver's side door.
Well, they had a little contact with somebody, a little meeting of the minds, but he's definitely catching David Gilliland. Now, when he gets to him, now what's he going to do? Now, he's been very, very patient. He's not abused his equipment, and that's allowed him to catch David Gilliland. Is he going to be able to try to get by him? Because he wants to get 5 points for leading this race.
Well, and this is a situation where David Gilliland and Mike Duncan are both beginning to get into a lot of lap traffic. And so this could work in Mike Duncan's favor, whereas if Gilliland takes the wrong line, Duncan could take advantage of that and possibly pass him for the lead.
Well, that's exactly right. But David Gilliland will get to the traffic first, so he has the benefit of knowing, which way it seems like they're going, and he sees them a few laps ahead, so he knows which line they're running. So he may try to pick that line. There's the 77 right there. That's Jason Jefferson, a very good racer from this part of the country, but he's a little bit off the pace right now, getting lapped.
Now there's 4 cars right now standing in front of David Gilliland and clean traffic. And look at this, how Gilliland is kind of locked in on the inside of the track, but Duncan the same situation.
They've got the 77 of Jason Jefferson in between them right now. See which way Mike Duncan decides to go. He looks like he's going to try to run the bottom of the racetrack.
Hugging that white line, trying to get a run as they go across the start-finish line.
David Gillen able to make the pass on Darrell Haar, the 71.
Gillen running a pretty good line as Duncan tries the inside of Jason Jefferson, gets by him.
Jason Jefferson is a former winner in this series. He actually won the first race he ever ran in the West Series.
Gillen now setting his sights on that 44 of Andrew Myers.
He's putting some good cars a lap down right now. We're talking about cars, close to the top 10 that he's putting laps down.
Gillen running strong. Mike Duncan still trying to negotiate his way through the lap traffic. We'll see if Gillen can continue to dominate the Coors Light 200 when we come back.
From green to checkered and all in between, Speed Channel is Race Day Central.
Just race it.
First, NASCAR This Morning gets you wired.
Door to door, beating and banging.
Then, NASCAR Victory Lane takes you inside the winner's circle.
So now we have a points race.
Sundays only on Speed Channel.
Welcome back to the Coors Light 200 at Evergreen Speedway. There's a new leader on the racetrack. Mike Duncan has taken over the top spot from David Gilliland.
We saw him gradually run down David Gilliland, and let's see if we can take a look here in a moment and how he made the pass for the lead.
Here it is. Duncan on the inside trying to get by the 88 of Gilliland.
Looks like Gilliland got a little bit loose off that corner. That slowed his momentum just enough to allow the 9 of Mike Duncan to get to the inside. Once Mike got here, David Gilliland knew that he was passed.
On the outside, Gilliland didn't want to try to push it. He looks as though he's had a tight car now for the last few laps because he's not been able to hold it down on the track as well as Mike Duncan has.
That's right, and the tires are giving up more and more and more. Oh, caution on the racetrack. I think we're getting a report from NASCAR that there's some debris in turn number 3.
So the second caution of the night comes out on lap 69. Duncan holding the top spot, but again we'll go to a double file restart, so that will put David Gilliland on the outside just as this race started about 70 laps ago.
This is one of the biggest short track races the West Series runs. This race is almost 130 miles. I think this caution right now will allow these guys to get in their pit window. I don't know that they want to put their tires on yet. They may want to save them till later, but they may want to get some fuel so they know they can make it to the rest of the way if this race was to go caution-free.
Which doesn't normally happen on a short track, but it's possible. Anything's possible. David Gilliland dropping back to second, so those 5 bonus points that you touched on, Phil, will go to Mike Duncan now, as he is going to be battling for a championship again in the 2005 season.
We've got a great dogfight for the championship, too, so every point counts, so they all want these 5 bonus points for leading the race.
Right now, Scott Lynch is our points leader. We take a look at that Napa Chevrolet of Steve Portengay. He's currently in the 3rd position.
Looks like his team's getting ready to come down pit road. Had a tire changer with an air wrench in his hand. Looks like he may be thinking about putting tires on.
You'd mentioned how only about 10 laps and these tires begin to wear out. So fresh tires could be very beneficial if the timing is right for Steve Portengay.
These cars and drivers will lose over a second as their tires get a lot of laps on them. So that's a lot of time to lose on a short track.
Qualifying for this race, just under 20 seconds was the pole for Mike Duncan. So every second counts as they're making laps around this half-mile track.
The top 8 are allowed to pit on the straight part of pit road. The rest of the field has to come on the short oval inside the racetrack. A big disadvantage for the teams not qualified in the top 8. There's our leader on pit road.
Mike Duncan ducking down pit road. He's got the first stall. The 16 of Steve Portengay going by now. Wendy's there.
The 16 of Steve Portengay is in on lap 70. It looks like the crew goes to work for tires. Now he has been tight everywhere these first 70 laps. When I spoke to him earlier today, now they are having trouble on the left-hand side. They cannot get the left front tire off. It is off now. Steve Portengay told me they have been good probably going to wait to the end, and he's going to be patient. So it's a little surprising that I see our third place guy come in only on lap 70.
And also getting out of his pit, his teammate Sarah Fisher was just in front of him. He had to work to negotiate getting out of his pit.
Remember, only 8 cars on the straight part of pit road, but it's still very, very tight.
Mike Duncan back out onto the track after a short pit stop. We'll be back with more on Speed.
Sports talk for car guys.
The subject is motorsports.
That's what it's all about.
And Dave is in the middle of it all. Wind Tunnel, live Sunday nights, 9 Eastern, only on Speed.
The Coors Light 200 on Speed Channel. David Gilliland out front. Why didn't he stop, Wendy?
Our leader, David Gilliland, you obviously see he did not come down pit road. I spoke to his crew chief, Mike Nake, and he said, we're waiting to the end for our tires. So 30 to 40 laps, you can see the 88 come down pit road. He definitely wants fresh tires for the end. Also, our second place guy is Andrew Lewis, and his crew chief, Dwayne Norm, basically has the same strategy as Mike Nake.
So a little strategy going into play here as we get ready to restart. David Gilliland on the inside has a great restart.
We see Mike Duncan, the 9, is on the inside now. He's already up to the 5th position, and he's got those fresh left side tires. We're going to see how good they are.
Just in front of him, Brett Thompson in that number 61. Like you said, fresh tires can be as much as a second on these cars, but negotiating through the traffic might be even more helpful to have fresh tires.
Absolutely, because you can take your car to places that the other guys cannot because they're just sliding on the racetrack.
Looks as though David Gilliland's got a pretty good line running still as he's able to pull away from some of the slower lap traffic that were up front.
And during this caution flag, his tires cooled off a little bit, so he's got a little bit better tires now than he had when the caution came out. But we're going to see how long it takes Mike Duncan to use those new left side tires and get to the front.
Duncan already up to the 4th position. Sets his sights on 3rd. Again, pretty much single file lines until you get into the corners. That's obviously the optimal place to pass.
That's right. Here comes Mike Duncan using those left side tires to get by the 61 of Brett Thompson.
Mike Duncan still trying to get by that 61. Hasn't made the pass as of yet. Wendy, what have you got?
You'll notice the 9 car of Mike Duncan is in the 3rd position. Before that caution, he was running 2nd. He came down pit road on lap 70 and took left sides only and fuel, of course, but no adjustment on Mike Duncan's car, who is now moved back up to the 3rd spot.
Yeah, I think it's obvious Mike Duncan likes his car. Getting ready to take over the 2nd position from the 18 of Andrew Lewis. Good run, though, for the 18 of Andrew Lewis.
Excellent run, and obviously he's up front because of pit strategy. A lot of the cars came in to either get fresh tires or fuel so that they might be able to go the remainder of this race.
Great battle for 4th. There's a 61 of Brett Thompson, and there's Scott Lynch, our 2003 West Series champion and our point leader.
Yeah, current points leader Scott Lynch battling back in the field a ways. It's Mike Duncan now has cleared the rest of the field, sets his sights on that 88 of David Gilliland.
We know that Mike Duncan put his left side tires on, so he's not going to have any more left side tires. I think he's saving his right side tires for later in the race. So it's going to be interesting to see how they will match up the 88 of David Gilliland, because he'll have 4 fresh tires when he decides to pit.
And here comes Steve Portengay into the pits.
Definitely an unscheduled pit stop.
Very, very unfortunate incident that has to bring him into the pits. Oh, and it looks as though they're going to open the hood on this one.
It looked like a bit of a surprise that the 16 was on pit road. I'm not sure they know what the problem is.
Well, they've got the hood up. They're looking underneath the hood. Well, and they're also going to look underneath the back end of the car.
There may be something wrong with the rear end of the car.
Well, let's go down and find out from Wendy Venturini. What's going on with the Napa Chevrolet?
The 16 of Steve Portengay is on pit road with the hood up. They just put it back down. They're trying to check out to see what's wrong. It could be transmission problems. The crew is now pushing it behind the wall. An unfortunate series of events. This was the 3rd engine of the weekend for Steve Portengay. They were trying to take so many precautionary reasons to keep this car going. They changed the engine yesterday. They changed it again today after test just because they thought something might be wrong with the engine, but now there is definitely something wrong with the car, and it looks like it may be transmission issues.
Wow, unbelievable weekend for Steve Portengay.
And what a big hit he's going to take in the points. He came in here 2nd in points, only 46 points behind our leader, Scott Lynch.
Mike Duncan was in 3rd, and he was about 22 points behind Steve Portengay, so this will be a big points night for Mike Duncan. And it could be even bigger if he's able to get back in front of David Gilliland.
Yeah, here come those fresh left side tires here. I think David Gilliland has done a great job holding off Mike Duncan thus far. Mike Duncan was mired back in traffic, but he's going to be no match to Mike Duncan's new left side tires.
Here comes Mike Duncan on the inside. He leaves David Gilliland on the outside, and it looks as though he will make the pass and take over the top spot once again.
See, David Gilliland saying to himself, just wait till I get my fresh tires on, Mike. You think it was easy to pass me? Well, I'm going to have fresh tires too.
Well, and this is a situation where Mike Duncan needs to put some serious distance between himself and David Gilliland, because he knows that the next pit stop, David Gilliland will probably have a better car than Mike Duncan will have.
That's exactly right.
So the Coors Light 200 continues, closing in on the halfway point. Mike Duncan out in front.
For the record, a fan's love of the race has no finish line. Busch Beer. For 24 years running, proud sponsor of the NASCAR Busch Series.
Somewhere near you, someone pulled an all-nighter in his garage last night. He works a double shift during the week so he can race during the weekend. He drives 300 miles on Saturday morning to drive 100 miles on Saturday night. He eats, sleeps, and breathes to make it to the victory zone in the NASCAR AutoZone Elite Division.
7 years ago, I was that guy.
Catch some stars in the making at a track near you. The NASCAR AutoZone Elite Division. They're on their way.
Welcome back to the Coors Light 200 on Speed Channel. Mike Duncan now out in front in that Lucas Oil Chevrolet.
Opened up a tremendous lead here. We're halfway, 100 laps to go. Got a big lead over the 880 of David Gilliland, but remember, David Gilliland has not put his new tires on yet. Mike Duncan still has right sides left, but he's already put his left side tires on.
David Gilliland did not come down pit road, and so he was able to stay out, gain some extra laps that he has led. He led early on in this race, led almost the first 60 laps. And then it was Mike Duncan that was able to take him over until they had a pit stop. Gilliland got back out front, but Mike has been able to work his way back out in front of this pack.
Great career. Champion last year, 2004, Mike Duncan.
41 top 10s for Mike Duncan. Sarah Fisher looking for a top 10, huh, Wendy?
Sarah Fisher has moved up to the 8th spot after that lap 70 pit stop, where she was one of the cars that decided to take 4 tires for crew chief Mario Isola, making that decision. Now, she did have a vibration early in the race, but that vibration has now gone away for Sarah Fisher. An interesting story about Sarah. She actually tested a Busch car for Richard Childress Racing just 2 weeks ago at St. Louis. She did some testing with Brandon Miller and Clint Boyer, who she said helped her out tremendously. So it could be possible to see Sarah Fisher a long time down the road in the Busch Series and maybe hooked up with Richard Childress Racing.
Yeah, there's been some rumor that Sarah may run a Busch race or two towards the end of the season. Doing a great job out here in the West Coast. Get some experience in these heavy, full-bodied cars. Such a different discipline from what her background, the IRL, but she was a former pole sitter in the IRL. She finished second at a race in Homestead. Did a great job in that series.
Big difference between open wheel and stock car racing.
You've got thousands of pounds of downforce. You've got extremely wide tires in those open wheel cars. And here you've got 3,300 pounds, skinny tires on a very abrasive racetrack that you lose all the grip.
Mike Duncan showing the way around this 5/8 mile track. Again, in and out of the lights at Evergreen Speedway.
He's not having much trouble seeing where he's going, though, because he usually has pretty clean windshield.
Not too many obstructions in front of the number 9 right now. He's put some pretty good distance between himself and second place David Gilliland. Ed Watson in the 55 trying to get by Scott Gaylord.
That's a battle for the 11th position. Ed Watson able to make that pass on Scott Gaylord.
Side-by-side racing in front of them as Ed Watson now sets his sights on some cars up front.
shot of the 2 of Mike David. Right there, that's the yellow car. Ed Watson has some fresh tires. That's why he's looking like King Kong right now, as you will on this racetrack with fresh tires.
Mike David started in the 11th position. Ed Watson started 5th but backed up, now making his way back through the field. Caution comes out on lap 109. And it sounds as though, again, we've got debris on the track.
I think some of these fellas that have not changed tires yet are awfully glad this caution came out. I think, again, we're in about 110 laps into this race or thereabouts, so I think we're going to see Mike Duncan make his way back to pit road possibly, and we know David Gilliland, Scott Lynch, and those fellas that haven't pitted yet are going to come down pit road. I think Mike Duncan will want to get his right side tires here. I don't think he will want to stay out on old right side tires.
So possibly David Gilliland, Mike Duncan coming down pit road. Again, Gilliland with 4 fresh tires available to him. Duncan already changed his left side tires early on in this one, so he has just right side tires available.
Yeah, David Gilliland, if he decides to put 4 tires on, which I'm assuming he probably will, he cannot do it all on one pit stop. He will come in, change right side tires, probably go back out, come back in and change left side tires.
Now, strategy in this race could play out to where David Gilliland with 1 stop could win this race, as opposed to, and you'd mentioned comes in twice, but 1 stop comes in and gets out front and wins this race. Now, Mike Duncan making it a 2-stop race possibly.
But we know that Mike Duncan will only have to make 1 pit stop for his fresh right side tires. David Gilliland, Scott Lynch, and the other fellas that haven't pitted yet will probably have to come in twice on this caution flag. I don't think we'll see anybody try to save their tires till later on. It's going to be very interesting. This is where the crew chiefs really make their money.
Bill Sedgwick, the crew chief for the number 9 of Mike Duncan, making that decision early on to go with just left side tires.
Remember that big lead that Mike Duncan had because of his fresh left side tires? Well, right now the 88 is right in his bumper.
Caution comes out, it levels them out. The 88 of David Gilliland will follow the 9 in. Wendy, I believe you're standing by with David Gilliland's crew.
The 88 of David Gilliland is on pit road. He was running second, and this is his first time on pit road tonight. Crew Chief Mike Nake was being a little sneaky. I said, when are you going to come down pit road? He said, the next caution. I said, what if that doesn't happen? He says, it will happen, and guaranteeing it did happen. And Mike Nake made the right call. 2 left side tires for David Gilliland, and a slight adjustment on the 88 car. He's down the way.
That was a bit of a surprise for me. I thought he would definitely come in and put right side tires. I don't know if he's going to save his right sides or will he come back in the next lap.
We'll find out when we come back to the Coors Light 200 on Speed Channel. Welcome back to Evergreen Speedway in Monroe, Washington for the Coors Light 200. Still under caution number 3 as they have cleared the track off and got it ready for racing. Out in front now, it is the 20 of Sarah Fisher that will lead this field to the green flag.
We heard Wendy tell us earlier that Sarah Fisher put her 4 tires on a previous caution flag, so she stayed out this time. And I believe that this is the first time in the over 50-year history of the West Series that a female has ever led a race.
Sarah Fisher putting her name in the record book for the West Series. Under this caution, the 88 and the 9 both came in and had pit work, and we're going to find out what took place from the pits with Wendy.
The 88 of David Gilliland, right before that last break, we noticed he took 2 left side tires. Well, guess what? Our leader at the time, Mike Duncan, decided to come in just now at lap 110 and take his 2 right side tires. He's moved back up to position number 3. So guess what David Gilliland did? He came back down pit road. Mike Nake made the call, and they came back in and did 2 more tires under this caution lap. So now David Gilliland in the 88 and Mike Duncan in the 9 have all their 4 tires, fresh tires, for the rest of the night, and we're back racing.
Back underway. Sarah Fisher again out in front. Double file restart. Mike Duncan right behind Sarah Fisher. Now they're 2 wide, battling for second. Mike Duncan trying to take the top spot early on.
A little bumping back between double zero of Scott Gaylord and the 08 of Scott Lynch.
Inside of Sarah Fisher, Mike Duncan tries to take away the top spot. Doesn't get it when they cross the start-finish line, but he's going to take it when he goes through 1 and 2.
Remember, he has those fresh right side tires now. Sarah Fisher's tires a little bit older. Great battle there. There's his 00 of Scott Gaylord. Here comes David Gillen, the 88. Remember, he has 4 fresh tires.
Mike Duncan out in front. Scott Lynch has gotten in front of the 20 of Sarah Fisher. Scott Gaylord just behind Sarah Fisher, and then we see the 88 of David Gillen making the pass on the outside.
Remember, the 08 of Scott Lynch also has 4 fresh tires. He got great pit work, got it out in front of David Gillen, so now he's got 4 fresh tires trying to chase down Mike Duncan's 2 fresh tires.
Scott Lynch with a very good car right now. It looks as though we've got our 4th caution coming out on lap 120 as Mike Duncan slows down his Lucas Oil Chevrolet.
Getting a report from NASCAR that there's some debris over in turn 2 on the outside of the racetrack.
It's been a night for debris so far at Evergreen Speedway, and the Great Northwest. We're just northeast of Seattle, Washington, in Monroe, Washington. Mike Duncan back up in front of the field. Scott Lynch right behind him.
Wednesday night on Speed. Local listings only on Spike TV.
Welcome back to the Coors Light 200 on Speed Channel. We are back underway. Mike Duncan out in front of Scott Lynch. Scott Lynch looking to claim his 3rd win of the 2005 season.
This is Scott Lynch's best chance. He's right behind the 9 of Mike Duncan. Has fresher tires on the left side than Mike does.
4 fresh tires for Scott Lynch right behind Mike Duncan. Wendy.
The 08 of Scott Lynch has not only been fighting a tight condition race car, he's also been fighting the flu this weekend. The 2-time winner of 2005 has been fighting a flu-like condition, he told me, but he's starting to feel a little bit better, and that's probably a good thing. He's running 2nd. Now, he does have fresher tires than our leader, Mike Duncan. Remember, Mike came in on lap 70 and has 40 more laps on his left side tires, but they both have the same amount on the right side tires. I just talked to Robert Stromiska, his crew chief, Scott Lynch's crew chief, and he said they may have a slight advantage with fresher tires and be able to get by the 9 of Mike Duncan.
Mike Duncan running very strong out in front of Scott Lynch, though it doesn't look as though Scott's been able to close the gap on Mike.
No, Mike's been able to hold him at bay, and you definitely want, if you had older right side tires, he would be a sitting duck right now. But ooh, look at Scott. Look to the inside. They had a good run through the center of the corner. Not quite able to make it work because Mike stays right on the bottom of the racetrack down in 3 and 4.
Looks as though Scott Lynch closes the gap through the turns, but then able to get back up and going quicker down the straightaways. And Steve Portengay makes it back out. We talked earlier about him possibly having transmission problems.
Yes, it turns out it was a rear end problem. He ended up losing a gear. Lost a number of laps while the team changed it. He's currently being shown in the 18th position. He's got a great race car, but unfortunately, he's not going to be able to make up that deficit.
Sarah Fisher, the number 20, she's led laps here at this raceway. That's Steve Portengay's teammate. I wonder if Sarah Fisher has a little bit of worries running a similar setup as Steve Portengay did.
Well, I don't think that has anything to do with it, whether it's a transmission or a rear end. I don't think you're going to have the same situation happen with another one of the cars. If it was a chassis setup maybe that went away, then she may worry about something like that.
Right now, nose to tail, Sarah Fisher just in front of teammate, the number 16 of Steve Portengay. Portengay trying to get by his teammate. Out in front, it's Mike Duncan still holding off the 08 of Scott Lynch, and now the tires somewhat have equaled themselves, I would think, after this many laps, Phil.
They really have. I think Scott Lynch would love to get by Mike Duncan, use his new tires to his benefit. The longer he waits, as you mentioned, the tires are going to equalize, and that means it's going to be harder for him to pass Mike Duncan. He's really good through the center of the corner in 3 and 4, but Mike, as you can see, stays below the white line. There's nowhere for Scott to go.
Steve Portengay, again, you mentioned, currently 18th, was off the track for quite a few laps with problems. Wendy, what was the problem on the Napa Chevrolet?
The 16 of Steve Portengay is back on track. I just spoke to his crew chief, Dusty O'Connell. They had to change the rear end gear in that car. Of course, they are going for the championships this season, so they came back in. They changed it as quickly as possible and got Steve back out there. He was second in points coming into this race at Evergreen. Of course, he's probably going to lose some points tonight as he is now 32 laps down.
Steve Portengay will probably lose the second position in the point standings to Mike Duncan. Duncan has been running up front, not only gaining the 5 bonus points for leading, but closing in on leading the most laps, which would give him 10 bonus points for this race. We'll see if Mike Duncan can stay out in front of Scott Lynch when we come back.
NASCAR Nation.
Why a hearse?
Why not?
I think everybody's going to want one in the hood.
What's up to everybody out there?
NASCAR never looked so good.
It takes more than one take.
An all-new NASCAR Nation, Monday through Thursday, 7 Eastern and Pacific, exclusively on Speed.
I'm Dale Earnhardt Jr. Welcome to a new generation of Wrangler.
New fits, new comfort, new styles. Wrangler Jeans Company, a new generation of Wrangler. New fits, new comfort, new styles.
Welcome back to the Coors Light 200 on Speed Channel. Evergreen Speedway in Monroe, Washington. Mike Duncan able to hold off the 08 of Scott Lynch.
We've got a big battle heating up for the second position of the 08 of Scott Lynch, the 88 of David Gilliland. David has the same tire strategy as Scott Lynch. He's been able to run him down because he restarted several positions behind Scott Lynch.
David Gilliland's led quite a few laps of this race so far. Scott Lynch hasn't made it up front as of yet. Has Mike Duncan in front of him. Now Gilliland holding on to that white line as Lynch slid up the track a ways. Now they're side by side for second.
He was able to turn down underneath and still get the power down. That was what was critical. He was able to make the pass on the 08 of Scott Lynch. Remember, he's on the same tire strategy as the 08 of Scott Lynch. He has 4-fish tires, where Mike Duncan has about 40 more laps on his left side tires than does David Gilliland. He wants to get by him quick.
Now, how long does it take to equal out? I mean, they've been on the track for almost 40 laps now since they've all come into pit.
Well, they're becoming more equal, but we don't know how many laps are in these tires. So we may get down to 10 or 20 laps to go, and Mike Duncan's tires may go completely away, where David Gilliland will still have some little bit of freshness in his tires.
So tires could be the big issue as Mike Duncan sits in front of David Gilliland. Just behind him, Scott Lynch. Mike David is in fourth, and Tim Woods III has made his way up into the top 5.
Good run for Tim Woods. We haven't seen him much this race, but he's been steady. Run a great race and into the top 5.
Now Duncan seems to put some distance between himself and that 88 of David Gilliland. A gap growing there, almost 5 car lengths.
His car is so good. We saw it early on in the race. He started out a little bit too tight, but then when the track came to him, he started making ground up, passed 88 for the lead, David Gilliland, and drove away.
Remember, it was 1982 the last time a pole sitter has ever won this race at Evergreen Speedway. Mike Duncan claiming the top spot in qualifying. Has had a great season so far of qualifying. David Gilliland qualified second and currently runs in the second position.
He looked a little bit loose off turn 4 that last time. Looked like he had to correct the steering wheel a little bit. See Mike Duncan able to make his way by a lap car. I think the lead is stabilized right now. It doesn't seem that Mike Duncan is losing any ground to David Gilliland at all.
Now Gilliland has to work his way around the 71 of Darrell Haar. In Haar, a lapped car. As you mentioned, Duncan's car really running well right now. He's put a serious bit of real estate between himself and Gilliland.
And I'm really surprised with those older left side tires. I really thought Scott Lynch first, and then David Gilliland would be able to have the measure of Mike Duncan, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Bill Sedgwick, Mike Duncan has a chassis set up in this car right here that is really, really good on old tires.
David Gilliland, almost a second and a half now behind the 9 of Mike Duncan.
The 08 of Scott Lynch remains in the 3rd position.
That gap that was once under a half a second has now grown to over a second and a half between Duncan and Gilliland.
I think right now David Gilliland would love to see a caution flag again because of these double foul restarts. He would be able to restart right beside Mike Duncan and then maybe have a shot at him on a restart.
Duncan able to get by Jack Sellers, a slower lapped car. Now Gilliland will have to negotiate his way around the 15 of Sellers.
Okay, I've not seen Mike Duncan spin a wheel this entire race. Have not seen him run any other place than where he wanted to on this racetrack.
And a huge gap now between Mike Duncan and that 88 of David Gilliland. So we'll see if Gilliland can reel him in or if a caution comes out to bring them closer together. We'll be back with more. The Coors Light 200. And welcome back to the Coors Light 200. As soon as I had mentioned a caution coming out, one did. We're back to the restart though. Mike Duncan with David Gilliland on his outside, and so that gap that had increased by Duncan being able to pull away from Gilliland has now diminished.
Mike Duncan able to keep the lead. Oh, we see the 61 of Brett Thompson bounces off the wall right in the middle of the backstretch.
Wow. Brett Thompson getting into the wall coming out of turn number 2. Able to keep it going, though, so we stay under green.
He's
Mike
off
Duncan.
the pace. Very top of your screen, you can see him running very slow. You see sparks out from under the car. He made some pretty good contact with the outside wall. Still green, though.
Stay green. Mike Duncan still out in front of David Gilliland.
I think that restart was probably David Gilliland's best shot at Mike Duncan as we see the 61 of Brett Thompson come down pit road.
And we've got someone down in the pits to tell us what's going on. Wendy, what's happening?
The 61 of Brett Thompson has severe damage on the right-hand side of his car as he had contact in turns 3 and 4 as the team goes to work on that car. An unfortunate weekend for Brett Thompson. Things have just keep getting worse and worse for him. This is his backup car. He actually wrecked his primary car yesterday in the open test session. So this is Brett's backup car, and obviously another bad night for Brett Thompson as he came off his season best finish just last weekend in Irwindale where he finished 3rd.
Brett Thompson bringing the 61 back out onto the track. Let's take a look at the replay of this accident.
I think this is really the aftermath. We saw him hit the wall in the middle of the back straightaway. This is actually after he had already made some contact and he was just trying to ride around the racetrack till he got to the entrance to pit road.
Sparks flying out of the 61. Obviously, a lot of damage to the right side of that car.
Mike Duncan again opens up a bit of a lead on the 88 of David Gilliland.
25 laps to go. Might not be enough time for that 88 of Gilliland to give a chase to Duncan right now.
The only thing he can hope is that right towards the end of the race that the tires on the 9 go completely away, because right now he is able to run every bit as fast as the 88 of David Gilliland with fresher tires.
Sarah Fisher currently in 11th position, running fairly well. Again, Sarah Fisher has led some laps on this race. Her teammate Steve Portengay had troubles early on, but she's been out on the track the whole time. Wendy, what's going on with Sarah?
Sarah Fisher in the 20 car did come down pit road on that caution. Her crew chief Mario Isola decided to put on their first set of tires, which were 70 lap tires, and the reason for that, he told me, because it was a cooler set of tires, nice cool tires on Sarah's car, he thinks will help her with her loose condition. She said she just can't get back on the throttle quick enough. Now her teammate, unfortunately Steve Portengay, is behind the wall and it's indefinite for him. He's done for the evening as he had rear end problems. Crew chief Dusty O'Connell told me he believes it's the gear pump has gone bad. It wasn't cooling the gear. They did change that gear, as I told you earlier, tried to get back out there and make up some laps because Steve Portengay is running for the championship, but that rear end pump is just not doing its job, and Steve Portengay is out of the truck and out of this race for tonight.
Well, Wendy, another car coming down pit road you're going to see soon is this 44 of Andrew Myers. Sparks flying out of that, a right front tire flat on it.
Yeah, tough break under green here. He's going to lose at least 2 laps making this tire change.
Duncan still holding on to the top spot. No caution coming out as Andrew Myers was able to get down pit road without causing any obstructions on the track.
David Gilliland able to stay with Mike Duncan, about an 8-10 car length lead for Mike Duncan. Not able to drive away from David Gilliland, but on the other hand, David Gilliland not able to close any.
And one thing that is a little bit odd is we've seen a couple tires now go down, and it looks as though they're holding Andrew Myers, but we haven't seen, oh, and the caution does come out. I believe this is for the tire off of the 44.
Yeah, that's why the official was holding him at the end of pit road. He had to wait till the field went by before they would allow him to drive out on the racetrack.
Our 6th caution of the night has come out at the Evergreen Speedway. The Coors Light 200 continues after this. Welcome back to Evergreen Speedway. Mike Duncan brings the field to the green flag. We're back underway. Our 6th caution just concluding.
One more shot for David Gilliland. He's got to do it now on this restart.
Mike Duncan, the preferred line on the inside, able to get out in front of that 88 of David Gilliland. And so Duncan holding off another charge from the 88 of David Gilliland. Mike Duncan looking for his 4th career win in this series. Wendy, what's going on with Mike?
Our leader, Mike Duncan, is definitely feeling the heat from David Gilliland. Now, Mike Duncan has had 3 top 3 finishes in the last 3 visits, but he has yet to seal the deal here at Evergreen. He's finished 2nd twice already this season, still looking for his first victory. He told me it's so frustrating here at Evergreen because patience is definitely the key. The harder you go, the slower you go. So obviously, David Gilliland's going to put on the pressure to Mike Duncan, and he's just going to have to be patient and stay in front of the 88.
Well, patience is a virtue, but in this case, it may win him a race.
That's right. He really has taken care of his tires. Had a great setup. He and Bill Sedgwick. A little bit tight at the start of the race, but Trek really came to him.
Here's a great battle for 5th. Mike David just in front of Andrew Lewis. Lewis to the inside, tries to take away that spot.
Great run by Andrew Lewis, looking for his best career finish. Was 8th coming in here, Stockton earlier this year.
A little loose as he is now in front of Mike David. David in that number 2 drops back to 7.
Years old and running with some pretty good company right here.
Out in front, it's still Mike Duncan with just 10 laps of racing to go. Duncan looking for his first win of the 2005 season. Mike David trying to hold off the 00 of Scott Gaylord. That's for 6th position.
Scott has really made a turnaround in this race. We saw him early on struggling a little bit, but he's got his car well up into the top 10.
Scott Gaylord currently in 7th position, looking for the 6th spot that Mike David holding on to. Gaylord able to run a lot lower line than Mike David.
He may have something for Mike David here. Again, just inside of 10 laps to go. He's going to have to do it pretty quick.
That's the 90 of Chris Schmezel.
Chris is running 8th right now. That would be his first career top 10 if he's able to hold on.
Great run for Chris. Out in front of the field, it's still Mike Duncan looking for his 4th career win in the West Series. In just 64 starts, he has 3 wins, but has never won at Evergreen. Wendy, how's Mike doing?
We've talked about Mike Duncan not being able to sit in victory lane here at Evergreen before, but his crew chief, Bill Sedgwick, has. And what's interesting about his crew chief, he's actually not even on the pit box. He's in the spotter stand spotting for Mike Duncan tonight. So Bill Sedgwick, double duty as crew chief and spotter for Mike Duncan, and he goes for his first victory here at Evergreen.
Such a big advantage for Mike Duncan to have somebody like Bill Sedgwick. And I think it's a great idea to have him up on the roof spotting because he can see the whole racetrack. He can see Mike's car. He can see the lines. And all he has to do is go down to the guys in the pit area and say, hey, put 2 tires on, put 4 tires on, whatever the case may be.
Mike Duncan utilizing that experience with Bill Sedgwick, using him up on the spotter stand tonight. Sarah Fisher with another impressive run. Currently in 11th position. Again, she led a lap or 2 at this race already.
First woman ever to lead a West Series race in the over 50-year history of the series.
Good run as she's beginning to get comfortable in these heavier cars now.
We heard Wendy tell us that she put 70-lap tires on this most recent caution flag because they were a little bit better, a little bit cooler than the tires she had on. She was one of the cars to put all 4 of her allotted tires on very early on. That's what allowed her to get the lead, but that's why she's been slipping and sliding. A great call by them to put her other tires on that she started the race on that only had 70 laps on them.
Mike Duncan on this 5/8 mile track with just under 4 laps to go has put some distance between himself and second place David Gilliland.
The last thing that Mike Duncan wants to see right now is a caution flag. He does not want to take a chance letting David Gilliland restart this race on his outside. Anything can happen on a restart. He wants this race to go clean and green to the end.
And now he's got some track in front of him that is clean. Just 3 laps remaining. Gilliland working his way through the slower lap traffic as Scott Lynch also does the same, currently in 3rd position.
There's a 61 of Brett Thompson. We saw him hit the wall a few moments ago. He's still circulating on the racetrack.
Mike Duncan crossing the start-finish line. 2 laps of racing to go for him to claim his first win in 2005.
He just wants to get this thing around, get to the white flag. If something happens after the white flag comes out, if it doesn't involve him, he's home free.
Making his way through 3 and 4 this time by. He'll see that white flag, and Duncan will take the white flag. 1 lap of racing to go for Mike Duncan.
Got a couple lap cars right in front of him. He doesn't want to take any chances with them. He may not catch them, but he's got enough of a gap that he's not going to take any chances.
Bill Sedgwick's probably saying in his ear right now, just take it easy, stay behind him. You got plenty of room between yourself and Gilliland. As he comes out of turn number 4, it's going to be Mike Duncan's 4th career win in the West Series and first at Evergreen Speedway.
Very impressive race for Mike Duncan. I never saw his car out of shape this entire race. They had a game plan. They stuck with it. Their chassis setup worked flawlessly. Hats off to Bill Sedgwick, Mike Duncan, and the Lucas Oil team.
Tim Woods III coming home in 4th. A great run for him.
Best career finish for Andrew Lewis in 5th.
Duncan bringing that number 9 to a stop. David Gilliland with an impressive 2nd place finish. Led quite a few laps here, but it was the 9 of Mike Duncan leading the most laps, so he will gain 10 bonus points for his effort tonight at Evergreen Speedway. The team celebrating win number 1 on the 2005 season, and this will move Mike Duncan into the 2nd position in points as Steve Portengay had some problems. We'll be back to hear from him after this. Welcome back to the Great Northwest. Monroe, Washington and Evergreen Speedway for the Coors Light 200 on Speed Channel. Mike Duncan claiming the win for 2005. The first time in 23 years that the pole sitter has been able to win this race. Mike did it in convincing fashion. And it's about time for him to get out and receive his trophy. Wendy.
Our reigning West Series champion climbs out of his winning vehicle, his 4th win of his career, the first of 2005. Mike Duncan definitely put his name in the history books tonight. His last win came last year in Eric, Colorado, as he gets congratulations from his crew. And what's important here, folks, I told you at the beginning of the race, nobody has won from the pole since 1982. 23 years since somebody has done that. And Mike Duncan has definitely put his name in the history books tonight as he celebrates with his crew. Mike, did you ever think that when I was just saying you put your name in the history books, what a great night for you. You finally cinched a victory here at Evergreen after a 2nd, a 3rd, and a 3rd.
What a great night for us. You know, the car was awesome. The Lucas Oil car just, it performed flawlessly for us. You know, the crew did a great job. We came in, I think our first pit stop, we lost a couple of spots. Guys that were a little bit, you know, same speed as we were, but we lost a spot with that last time. We came in, they got me out in front of all those guys. It sure took a lot of pressure off me. Sure a proud moment for us to win at Evergreen.
Now there's somebody special that's not down here in Victory Lane. Here he is. He's just coming up. Bill Sedgwick. He was actually doing double duty.
You're the man, right?
How was that race for both of you guys?
Get in here. This guy, he's awesome. I love driving what he puts underneath me. You know, he is the man. He's had probably more wins than anybody here. I don't know, but I know that he knows this place, and he did it tonight.
All right, Bill, we want to hear from you as well. You're a former winner at Evergreen, and now your driver's also in the history books. It was back in '92 the last time you won here, and now you can win as a crew chief.
It's great feeling. You know, he's winning all tracks I won at. It's pretty cool. We can keep going.
Seems like this combination is definitely a good thing for this team, guys.
Back on their winning ways, Mike Duncan in victory lane for the first time in 2005. We take a look at the final results from Evergreen Speedway for the Coors Light 200. It's Mike Duncan claiming win number 1 in 2005 season. David Gilliland coming home in 2nd.
Great run by Tim Woods, the 3rd best finish of the year in 4th. Andrew Lewis with a career best finish of 5th.
Scott Lynch not hurting his points lead at all as he comes home in 3rd. Darrell Harr with a good run in 9th. Chris Melzel with a first top 10 finish in 8th position.
Yeah. Ed Watson gets a top 10 in the 55 car.
Sarah Fisher finishing up in 11th after leading a couple laps here at Evergreen.
Jason Jefferson, first car 1 lap down in 12th.
That's 16 of Steve Portengay having troubles. And so he spent quite a few laps behind the wall. The point standings through 6 races. Scott Lynch Still holding on to the top spot, just 48 points in front of Mike Duncan. Duncan moving ahead of Steve Portengay, who was second coming into this race. David Gillen also leapfrogging Portengay into third.
Got a couple rookies in the top 10, Andrew Lewis and Andrew Myers, 9th and 10th.
The crowd filing out of Evergreen Speedway after a great race. We had only 6 cautions on the short track. 3 different drivers ran up front. It took Mike Duncan 65 laps to take the point, but after that he had figured this 5/8 mile track out. Career win number 4 for Duncan puts him right back in contention to defend his points title in 2005. For Wendy Benarini and Phil Parsons, I'm Rick Allen saying thanks for joining us for West Series Racing on the Speed Channel.